What's up guys, Braden here with SuperATV, and today we're going to be showing you how to install SuperATV's full cabin closure doors on this Can-Am Defender. So let's get right to it. Grab our pillar bracket, as well as the striker bracket, and then our side clamp here. So what we're gonna do is go ahead and pre-install all of these components to the side pillar here. That way, whenever we go to install it and get our foam and everything on it, it's just that much easier. So this is gonna install to the machine, just like so. So what you wanna do is make sure that if this is the inside, the striker sits just like so. So we're gonna grab our striker bracket, like I said, line it up with these two holes. This will be the inside. Then we wanna grab two of our M8 by 25 millimeter screws. Make sure that you put a flat washer up against the head, and we'll slide it through the hole in the panel. And we'll go along to the back side and install a nylock nut. That's an M8 nylock nut. Same thing for the other hole here. Install the nylock nut. Just like that. And then remember, this is going to be our outside. So we're going to take our clamp, and I like to just loosely install these clamps. So the clamp will sit just like so. So what I'm gonna do is grab my M6 hardware, put a flat washer on it. We're gonna just slide it right through the hole in our pillar, through our clamp here. And you'll see that you have some rubber gasket on this. You just wanna kind of pop the hardware through that rubber gasket. We're gonna grab an M6 nylock nut. Just go ahead and just get it started on here. We're not going to tighten it up much at all. We want to leave it to where it can rotate around, move around. That way it makes it nice and easy to install. So now what we're going to do is go ahead and install our foam to the back side here at all the points that this pillar is going to make contact with the cage of the machine. This is going to be the lower hinge mount. It's going to line up with the 4 threaded holes. And then where it has this bend, it's going to follow this contour of the hinge mount itself. So we're gonna grab 6 of our M8 by 20 millimeter Allen screws with a M8 flat washer. What we're gonna do is just go ahead and start our hardware right through our mount, right through our bracket, directly into our mount. Same thing on the upper mount here. Let's get your hardware started. Then we're going to grab our strap with our M6 Allen headed hardware with an M6 flat washer, as well as an M6 nylock nut. We're going to have a hole right in the side of our mount here. We'll just pop our hardware through the strap, just like so. Pop it through the hinge mount, and then reach around on the back side and start our nylock nut. We're gonna make sure that this one goes on our hinge bracket. This is gonna be the big bracket that attaches to the cage in the rear. Just gonna go ahead and peel the backing off of it. We're gonna start right here in this corner. We're just gonna work it all the way down and around. You want to get it as close to that edge as you can, but you don't want it to overlap. It just won't look the best if you do that. And once we get right down to this point here, we can just go ahead and cut off our excess, or you can tear it, either way. It tears apart pretty easily. Just do that. We'll take this foam, we'll set it aside. Grab the thinner of the two foams that come in the kit, and we're gonna foam this edge all the way down to here. This edge over here that the striker's attached to, we're not gonna foam it. Run it all the way down to this corner here. And honestly, what I like to do, you can run it all the way around consecutively, but what I like to do is once I get to this little pocket right here, I like to just go ahead and cut it off or tear it. Either way, it's totally up to you. Just like so. And then we'll take it and we'll butt it up, just like that. Run it to this edge here and cut it off. And on this one, if you cut it off straight, as you can see, you're gonna have an overhang. So what I like to do is take my blade, kind of use the corner here as reference. Cut off the excess at an angle, just make it look a little better. And then up here at the top as well, we have just a slight bit of overhang. You can either peel it up right here and just kind of tuck it to make it smaller, or you can cut it off, totally up to you. Now we're ready to get both of these panels installed to the machine. So the first thing we're gonna do is go ahead and dump our bed, get it flipped back, and then the side panel here, you're gonna have a push pin on top and a push pin on bottom. You wanna go ahead and remove those. So the first thing we're gonna do is go ahead and remove our bar out of the way. So take a socket here. Remove that hardware. And if you follow the tube down, there'll be two mounting screws on the back side behind the upper seat cushion. They're kind of hard to get to. Just grab your tube and remove it from the machine and set it aside. Now what we're gonna do is remove our two upper cage bolts. It's a 15 and a 15. If your machine is still equipped with the factory door nut, you want to go ahead and remove that at this time. Our machine is not, but if you have the door nut, just remove all the hardware that secures the door nut to the machine. Now we're going to grab our M8 clip nut out of the kit. We're going to take it in this bottom factory hole right here. Just going to take the clip nut, wiggle it on, just like that. Then we're going to grab our panel, just like so. We'll grab an M8 by 35 millimeter bolt with an M8 flat washer to the clip. Just like that. And then our clamp that we previously pre-installed, I just want to lip it around the cage. We have a power flip windshield on this machine, so I'm gonna go ahead and just bump this power flip windshield up just a little bit, just so it gives me a little room to get that hook of that clamp around the cage. I can lip that clamp around, just like so. And we're gonna grab our hardware to install through this hole here, and then we'll fully tighten all the hardware here except for the striker bracket. So we're gonna grab our M8 by 55 millimeter Allen with an M8 nylock nut. We're gonna slide it right through this hole here. Make sure it goes right through to the other side of the frame. Should go just like that. Then we'll just install our nylock on the opposite side. And then we're good to go to fully tighten this bolt, and this bolt. So we have all this hardware installed. Now we're going to install our rear hinge bracket. Before we can install our rear hinge bracket, we have to remove this factory T30 Torx. We'll just set it aside because we will be reinstalling it. So now we can take our rear hinge bracket, lay it up here just like so, line it up with the factory cage bolt hole, just like so. Reinstall our T30 that we just removed. Once you have it good and started, you can just kind of snug it up. Slide this up to where it fits into the contours nicely, just like that. Put a nut on the back side of it. Now we're going to grab our clamps to attach through here to the cage, as well as this location here. So now we're going to take our clamp, kind of pull back on our windshield just a little bit if you can. If not, you may have to loosen some hardware. And we'll come from the outside with our M6, slide it through just like that. And then put a nut on the back side, which makes it a little bit easier. You can get these clamps shimmied in between the bolt seal. You just have to apply some force to it. Just like that. Take your hardware, slide it through. Once you have your hardware started, you can go ahead and fully tighten both clamps, your upper nuts for your cage mounting, and as well as your T30 Torx on the bottom. What we're going to do now is grab our lower door hinge mount. Remove our protective film just enough to get this installed. We're going to grab our M8 by 25mm hardware that we've been using. Make sure that we have an M8 flat washer installed. We'll go ahead and just get our hardware started directly into the door itself for all 4 of the mounting locations here. And with these, I like to just run them up by hand until they touch. That way this bracket doesn't flop all over the place. We don't want to fully tighten it just yet. Like I said, you just want to get it close. And then underneath this tape here, you're going to want to peel that off. You're going to see that you have a key. Most of the time these doors come locked, so you just want to go ahead and take your key at this point, stick it in the lock, go ahead and unlock it. And then put this somewhere for safekeeping. Once we get the hardware started, we'll go ahead and move over to the machine, get it slid on the hinge, just like we did on the lower door. Now we're going to grab our lower portion of our enclosure, take it, and slide it right onto the hinges. Sometimes these can be a little bit tight going on. Just keep working them down. Once you've opened and closed it a couple times, you give it one final push, and as you can see, it's fully seated down at this point. In order to get it adjusted correctly, what we're going to need to do is go ahead and start tightening our hardware for our striker. What I like to do is just kind of set it at the lowest point at first. Go ahead and snug these 2 bolts up here, and then we'll start adjusting around on the actual striker itself here. So we'll just start trying to close the door and kind of seeing where it's heading. Looks like our striker needs to come out a little bit. So we'll just unthread it a few turns, run up the lock nut. So this is one of the more tedious parts of the installation here, is just getting everything adjusted correctly so everything lines up nicely, opens and closes nicely. So what I like to do is just kind of reach in and engage my striker, figure out where it lays out the nicest, because we want the door to seal up good. You know, so it's okay if you have to push on this door to get at the latch. That means it's just gonna enclose you that much better. It's gonna fit that much better and seal up that much better. So right about here is where I like the striker to be. So that way it stays in place the best that it can. Now what I like to be able to do, so as you can see, this door opens very nicely. And kind of one of my tests, you know, everybody's a little bit different on how they like to adjust doors. What I like to do is, I don't want somebody to have to slam this door, run up here and, you know, force it shut. I like to be able to, when I get out of the machine, just kind of give it a nice push when it latches. And I want it to open nicely too. I don't want it to open super hard. This door right now, it's opening and closing nicely. Another thing to check is grab a hold of this door, try to open it up, you know, without pulling the latch, just pull on it a little bit. Make sure that the latch is actually engaging the striker pin correctly. I've seen some people, you know, have a complaint that the door might come open. It's because a lot of times it's not adjusted correctly. The striker's not actually getting fully engaged into the door latch itself. But as you can see, this one opens and closes nicely, just like that. So now we have the upper portion. So summertime riding, you probably wouldn't be running the upper portion on your machine, or maybe you would depending on where you're at around here. You know, in the summertime it gets pretty warm. I like to run these convertible doors with the tops off of them, and they work nicely as a half door. Now we're gonna show you how to install the upper portion of the door. I'm just gonna grab the upper door. Lid on there just like so. Just kind of double check that everything's going to line up as it should. If it does, there's no need to really readjust anything. You want this bulb seal here to be hitting the cage pretty hard at the top. Because once you slam this door in, it's really gonna make a good seal all the way around and get it as airtight as possible. So that's laying out pretty well. And if you look at our hinge mounts, so I'm gonna go ahead and snug these up. We'll open the door up, connect the lower to the upper, and then just open and close it a few times, double check it and see if we potentially need to make any adjustments. Now we're gonna grab our M10 headed bolts here. We're gonna drop them right down through the upper to the lower. And you'll have to kind of pull up on the doors a little bit to get everything to line up in order to get a thread started. So then we're just gonna keep installing the hardware here. And then the forwardmost hole is actually threaded. So what I like to do a lot of times is go ahead and start snugging these bolts up here until our front hole lines up really well, and then we'll go ahead and start the bolt in there and get it tightened up. So now that we've added the upper portion to the lower portion of the door, remember earlier we were kind of talking about it may be just a little bit harder to latch, but it's gonna seal up really well. That's the case now. So you've seen how nice and easy the lower door only, open and closed, and that's fine. You know, if you're running the lower door, obviously you're not trying to enclose your entire cab. If you're running the upper door, you're obviously trying to enclose your cab. So adding this and all the additional seal, you have to really close this. But if you look at the seal all the way around this door, it's perfect. It's sealing everywhere that it needs to be. I'm not seeing any air gaps or anything anywhere. It has a nice equal gap across the top of the cage. The bulb seal here is smashed out nicely. This cab's gonna seal up great. You can still open the door, but it does take a little extra muscle to get it to latch all the way. But, you know, if you don't like it like that, you can absolutely adjust around on your doors however you'd like. This is how I recommend for you to install it. to get the best seal possible. Now we're gonna go ahead and open our door back up. We're gonna install our gas strut. So the gas strut's gonna attach here onto the upper door frame and then here onto our hinge bracket. Now we're just gonna take 2 of our M8 nylocks, same ones we've been using for the entirety of this install, install them to both the inner and outer portion of the gas strut. We'll grab a 12mm wrench to hold the nut on the strut itself and then snug it up with a 13 socket. Now we're gonna install our mirror. Once you remove the mirror from the packaging, you're gonna notice that you have a flat bracket here. Just remove the 2 8mm screws, remove that bracket so that your mirror looks just like so. Then we're gonna have the small hardware that's in the kit. It's the 8mm headed hardware with the 8mm nylock nut. We'll just wanna take the hardware and feed it through. And then just go ahead and start your nut. Just like so. And then we'll just get our mirror adjusted around how we like it and then snug up the hardware. The door, but you just want to get it snugged just like so. So on all of the hardware that we've installed throughout this install, on the back side, the threads will be sticking out of the brackets. In the kit, you're going to see that you have these Alcorn nuts. What you're gonna do is go to the back side of all of your hardware. So all of these here, where they stick through the bracketry or the threaded plates, you'll just wanna take your Alcorn nuts, thread them on, tighten them down. That way the threads aren't exposed. That way you're not rubbing your arms or your back or any way or anything like that. So now all you're gonna do, go through, thread those on, tighten them, you're good. So now you're just gonna take your Alcorn nuts, go inside and thread them onto each of your threads and tighten them down. Now all you have to do is repeat all these same steps on the opposite side, and that's all there is to it to install SuperATV's convertible cab enclosure doors on this Can-Am Defender. Be sure to check the description below to pick yours up today. While you're there, drop a like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.